Hey, what's going on, everybody? Moki F1 here, and welcome to my F1 channel. So let's get out of the way. What can you expect from this channel? Well, I would like to do discussions about things like, of course, qualifying and the races. Of course, covering some news articles will be cool too, but there's so much conjecture. Be forewarned, I'm not going to cover every single news article because there's so much conjecture and like guessing. Not a big fan of all that. But what I will also be doing is implementing some of the F1 games as well. Big gamer. The F1 games is how I got into F1 back in 2016, at the end of 2016, because I thought the F1 2016 game was so sick. And they gave a free trial for that one. So yeah, thank you, PlayStation, I guess. So this is a tier list, of course, for all the drivers. So what I sort of, oh yeah, it's like a do I love them tier list. Sorry. So I'll change this to A, B, C, and D. This is purely, I'm pretty pragmatic as far as drivers go. I really don't care if they mouth off on the radio and stuff like that. What I really care about is, their performances and whatnot. That's really what I focus on for the most part. Of course, if someone's annoying on the radio, I'm going to mention it, but it's not really going to factor too much into their rating. This is also a great way for you guys to get an idea of, my approach to Formula One, what I think about Formula One, how I rate the drivers, and so on. So how much you agree or disagree with my opinions and whatnot. So yeah, I think this is a great place to get started. So let's do it. I'll put George Russell in A. I think he's really fast in these ground effect cars, so that's obviously a big plus. And I think his racecraft is pretty solid. So I would rate him like, I'll rate him like pace highest, then racecraft, and then tire management, maybe tire management over racecraft. Yeah. So he's really solid overall, becoming less and less accident prone as time goes on. Of course, he still has those crazy moments where he does crazy weird dives and stuff like that, and weird, like, way too defensive moves and whatnot. He still does that from time to time, but he's being less crazy about it, which I think is great. Yeah, so I think he's a really solid driver, good A spot. So I'll put Carlos in B. This might make people mad. Of course, we all love Carlos Sainz, great dude, but I think there's a reason he's off Ferrari now. I think he's just okay. He can hook up a weekend and get a win for sure if he's well, yeah, I think if the car is underneath him, if it's a car he likes, I mean, yeah, he can hook it up, and if it's the fastest car, he'll win. But it feels like he really doesn't like over extract anything from the car. It feels like George, for example, will pull everything he can out of the car, and say like his teammate Charles Leclerc will pull even more from the car than like George Russell would have. So I don't really think he really extracts everything he can from a car. I don't think he goes for every single overtake he could go for. I think his defense is kind of mid, and his tire management mid. There's a lot of mid things about him. I think there's a reason he's going to Williams. Of course, Williams is on the uptick, which is good for them. But there's a reason he went to Williams and not another not even like a top 5 team. So yeah, I think he's there. He's pretty much the definition of a B, so he'll probably stay at the top of B. Lance, yeah, I mean, D tier attitude, but yeah, I guess C. His pace is okay. He still does. He definitely crashes way too much. Still, makes too many mistakes. But you gotta say he does go for overtakes. His defense is okay. And I mean, when the car is good, he's pretty good. But I mean, Alonso, of course, has just been putting him to shame. But of course, Alonso, 2-time world champion, should have been like a 4-time world champion in my opinion. But yeah, we all know Alonso's incredible, even now. So it's hard to like really rate Lance Stroll because Alonso is like one of the best to ever do it. So it's hard to rate him, but I'll put him in C. And that car has been so up and down this season. Well, it's been up and down since the ground effect era. Since Aston Martin began. Really, it's just been up and down. So he's hard to rate. Not Hulkenberg, sorry, Magnussen. I'll put him like here. He's just way too aggressive and crash prone, and accident prone, accident causing. Yeah, just too much. This guy's just too much. But I think his pace is solid though. So I always felt like this guy, if he was in a really fast car, he'd be very dangerous. He'd be very hard to deal with. But yeah, he's in a slower car, so I think like his driving style, his level of aggression is really not like justifiable. It's really not. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for him right now. So Yuki, I think is a lower class B at the lower class. I don't know what the hell I'm like. He's like a lower B right now. I mean, he's better than he was for sure. making less and less mistakes, being less erratic on track, all that good stuff. But there's a reason, like even Daniel Ricciardo, who Yuki was beating, was in talks for being in the Red Bull seat, whereas Yuki almost never was. Obviously, he's still there. He's in the conversation technically, but he's not being taken seriously even now, which is some unfairness from Red Bull. But I mean, they do have reasons to not promote this guy. I mean, he's had a decent amount of time in the sport now, and he still feels like he has a little ways to go in terms of everything, basically. Because he definitely has like up and down races too. Like sometimes the guy is just like the back of Q3 for some reason when the car really shouldn't be there. So yeah, he does that inconsistency of like pulling the car together. Because Pierre Gasly did it in 2021. Like he was just pulling that car up constantly, and Yuki just can't really seem to do that. Replicate that same thing. And so Hamilton, qualifying wise, I mean, Hamilton says it himself. He seems very displeased at the end of pretty much every single qualifying. He's just not a good qualifier in these cars, so I think that really hurts him. But then, you come to the race, and this guy is like the best racing driver on the grid, potentially. It's hard to say whether Max or him are better, like, racers, straight up in the race racers. And that's why, even now, even after Mercedes was so much slower than Red Bull, when the cars start to, like, come together in performance, we still see them battle so much on track because they are, I think, the best racers. But yeah, I mean, just think about how many points, how many potential podiums may have been lost because Hamilton just can't seem to qualify quickly in these cars, unfortunately. It sucks, but I mean, yeah, I gotta just put him there, unfortunately. So Max, I think, is probably still the de facto best driver. I can't really think of anyone else I would really put in the top spot. He's simply the best. He extracts everything he can from the car. Good qualifier as well. Goes for really nice overtakes. I think, Hungary was a bad look for him for sure, but let's be real, like, most weekends aren't like that. He just cuts straight through the grid. Cuts straight through the grid with ease because he's just a really, really good racing driver. Too aggressive sometimes, absolutely. But, he not like the old days where he used to crash out. He is too aggressive, but he's not like Kevin Magnussen, who will just like tank the car. He's not like that. So yeah, I think he's very deserving of being the best driver right now. Piastri, Piastri's my boy. I'm rooting for him all the time. But I think as everything about him improves, his tire management's been a lot better. He's working better under pressure now. I think his racecraft is really clean. He's like one of the most clean racers we have. Just the pace is, again, just like Hamilton in qualifying. Piastri's qualifying and race pace, it's just not as good as Norris's. So like if Norris is tight on a race weekend, he's not being too aggressive or anything like that, and he's just racing his race, and he's going to be P1. Piastri's going to be P2 every time because Piastri just doesn't have the raw pace. Period, end of story. But I mean, the guy's a race winner, at this point, 2-time race winner, but we'll just call him a 1-time. Actually, did I get that wrong? Has he won 3? I think the third is a sprint I'm thinking of. But, we all saw Baku, right? The guy clearly has a lot of potential, but I think he needs to up his pace, which is extremely hard to do in Formula 1. To get more pace, it's kind of really difficult. But yeah, I mean, I think overall he's better than Norris, just the pace is so much worse. Speaking of pace, probably the best qualifier in F1 right now, I would say, is Charles Leclerc. He just, like, Sainz will be back in P5, and Charles just gets 3 purple sectors for, like, no reason. Verstappen's a great qualifier, too, but I think Charles is a little bit better, and I think he just, he made really, really, really bad mistakes throughout his career, but it seems like we're easing up on the dumb mistake, Charles Leclerc. I think dumb mistake Charles Leclerc is closer and closer to just being a thing of the past, and like we don't have to worry about him crashing out in quali in Baku, crashing lap 1 in Monaco, spinning out in France. I think we can finally stop worrying about stupid mistakes like that from him, and he also seems to be dealing with making those mistakes better, which is awesome to see as well. So yeah, I think he's honing his craft. Even with all the pressure that's on him, the ups and downs of Ferrari, the weird strategies, the weird performance drop-offs, he's handling it all really, really well and still improving, I feel like. So, yeah, I think he's worthy of an S tier. Pierre Gasly, yeah, with Alpine and Kick Sauber both, it's really hard to rate them because the car's been so bad. But you know, when the car is good, Pierre does hook it up. I think he's solid. I'll put him in like a B. Again, really hard to rate him. Because like we have to rate his 2024 performance here. You know, I raved about his 2021 performance. That was absolutely incredible from him. So clearly there is something there for Pierre bars, but you know he just doesn't realize it every race, and you know it's hard to pin on him because the car wasn't so great this season. It wasn't so great. It was one of the worst cars this season. Heavy boat of a thing. But yeah, anyways, you guys get what I'm saying. Like it's hard to rate him, so I'll just put him in a B. I think Yuki has higher highs. They're very similar. Where like sometimes they'll just dunk to the back of the grid for some reason. And I tend to think it's the car with both Yuki and Gasly. So I think they're very similar in that regard. So Lando, I think has earned an S tier by this point. But just barely. You know, I could really see putting him in A. If you want to put him in A, that's totally fine. I just think it's been really, really difficult for him to cope with all the pressure, with the sudden performance gain, suddenly being able to contest with Red Bull. It becomes very difficult to like, okay, well now, you know, I've been ready before to maybe like, oh, maybe this weekend I'll have to really nut up and like try and go for P1 this race. Now he has to do it every single race, and that's a lot of pressure because the guy behind you is someone different every single race this season. So yeah, it can feel really, really tricky, but I think he is coping so well so far that I think he's worthy of an S tier because he just seems to be getting better and better. You know, he's less erratic with his strategy calls. His tire management's solid as always. Pace is great. So yeah, I think he's worthy of that. I think he's finally worthy of an S tier, but just barely. So Checo, you know, with what came out about, you know, the teams not listening to him and stuff like that, they should have listened to him. He was suffering while Max was thriving because of the changes made to the car. Now Red Bull admits that, and they're like, okay, well, now all the problems. Perez was right. We should have listened to the guy. Verstappen probably would have won anyways. So Perez, I'll just put him in B. He still just makes some really whack mistakes. We all saw 2023 Mexico. So I know I just mentioned how we're just talking about 2024, sorry. So 2024 Monaco, we all saw 2024 Monaco. You know, he just, and then Baku just recently, of course you could also pin that on signs. It just feels like he doesn't hook 110% out of the car, whereas Verstappen, you know, Leclerc, Russell, Hamilton during the race, they all definitely do. And it feels like the racecraft isn't quite as smooth as, like, for instance, Piastri. It just seems like he not only is up and down, but when he's up, he's really not pushing the car to 110%. You could say he did it in Baku. That'd be absolutely fair, but I think that's a bit of recency bias. Speaking of recency bias, Albon, kind of hard to rate this guy. Because now that Franco is a thing, becomes much harder to rate Albon. Because now this rookie's coming in and is doing almost as good as Albon. You could say a little bit better, maybe in like Baku. So it then becomes really hard to rate him. So it's hard to say he's above a B. So just like from my perspective, I think having a bad car doesn't, you know, automatically make you go up the list. You're gonna hate that when I get to Hulkenberg, but yeah, I think he's a B because, you know, his racecraft's pretty good. When there's a good pass, he can get it done. It just feels like he sometimes just doesn't adapt to the car very well. Has a lot of complaints about you know, if the car's a little bit off, he complains a lot, and I think that he kind of gets in his own head, and his pace suffers as a result. Yeah, so I think he's probably still just a B. Again, really hard to say because the Williams car has been so up and down. It's been crashed so many times by both Albon and Sargent. So yeah, it's just so hard to rate that guy. Ocon he's a lot like Pierre. These guys kind of do the same thing, where they kind of trade places, honestly, even though Gasly is winning. They kind of trade places with like, okay, who is going to outperform the car this weekend? Is it going to be Ocon? Is it going to be Gasly? Gasly this weekend. Oh no, Ocon this race. But I think like his Ocon's over aggression is definitely his biggest weakness. His tire management seems solid, but a little bit worse than like most of the grid. So yeah, and just like, yeah, the aggression is just too much. It's like the opposite of a Piastri, where it's just like, The racecraft is not that great, and it's way over aggressive. But I do think that his pace is ridiculous. I think if Ocon ever got in just like a super dominant car, I think he could potentially be a world champion. And I'm not kidding. It depends. Obviously, it depends who his teammate would be. But if he got in like an OP car, he could just like make a run for the championship. I think his pace is that insane. But yeah, I think he's a good example of like raw pace doesn't win the day, basically. Basically, his entire career has been like 2016, 2017 Verstappen. Now, Hulkenberg, I'm sorry, all right? I'm putting him in A. He doesn't have to be here, okay? If you guys want to put him down to like B or something, totally understand. I totally understand. It's just, it feels like this guy is usually so like S tier is like they pull the maximum and above, get it, the maximum and above of what their car is capable of every single race. Then A is like most races they do it. I feel like Hulkenberg most races pulls the most possible out of his car, and then sometimes, and then his qualifying is awesome as well. He's a great qualifier, tons of experience, so his racecraft's good too. So speaking of experience, though, we got to talk about Alonso. I think Alonso is just more well-rounded than Hamilton because his qualifying is good. So yeah, I'll put him like there. Pretty undeniable, you know, what he did in 23, and then now that the pace has come back to the Aston this season, what he's doing now, you know, now that the car is more geared towards him versus Stroll. Again, you know, when you have Stroll as your teammate, it's hard to rate you, because if you're in F1, chances are you're better than Stroll, unless your name is Logan Sargent. Yeah, I think he's worthy of that spot for sure. I think he could probably keep this up for a few more years, it seems like. If he gets a podium-capable car, I think he's going to put it in the podium every time. Danny Rick, I'll put him at the top of C, just because he wasn't too accident-prone. He wasn't too aggressive or anything like that. He got passes done, but, you know, his racecraft, it just was not what it used to be. He used to just make the most insane overtakes, and it seems like he just never took any risks at his time in V-Carb, so... yeah, it was just a shame to see. His pace wasn't all that great. You know, his qualifyings were kind of lame. So I think he deserves to be down there. I mean, there's a reason he's going. So, so then Logan, yeah, pretty obvious D tier. Just too accident prone. He drove the car pretty hard, which is admirable, but that, you know, like kind of made him crash a lot. And yeah, too aggressive on the overtakes as well. Pushed the car too hard to the point where, again, he crashed constantly. Again, Albon actually crashed a lot too. It's a tricky car to drive, so yeah. I think there's a reason he's gone. So I think D tier for him. Just too crash prone. Pace wasn't good enough. Yeah. Now I mentioned earlier, kick Sauber guys. It's really hard to rate them because the car is so terrible. So I'll put them there. Zhou towards the bottom. I think he's probably, I mean, he knows his time in F1's done, so he just doesn't really care anymore, unfortunately. But it seems like he's trying. Right, you know, it seems like every single race he's trying to pull everything he can out of the car. He just can't. Same with Valtteri Bottas, but Bottas obviously has better racecraft when passes do eventually come. But again, it's really hard to rate things like that when like you can't really pass people in the worst car. So yeah, other than Logan Sargent. So Franco, a lot of excitement around him, a lot of hype around him. I'm very much in the Franco camp for sure. I'll say he splits the Alpine drivers. For now, it's really hard to say because the potential here is absolutely insane. He could be the next Piastri, really. That's how I see him. If he did end up having a seat for next year, and then hopefully in 2026 we'll see him. So yeah, I think you know, recency bias is a thing, but we've seen him in some full weekends now, and he's just been really solid throughout. Good quality, good race, nice and clean. I think he only had one accident in Baku, and it's Baku, of course you're gonna have an accident. So yeah, I think he was really impressive, so I'll leave him there. I won't definitively say he's better than Albon, but I will do another tier list at the end of the season for final wrap-up, and you know, I might end up putting him above Albon, depending on how the last races go. So alright, that is the end of the tier list, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know where you agree, where you disagree. I'm sure some Hulkenberg haters, the HHs as I call them, will be coming in and tearing down my Hulkenberg pick, but yeah, let me know what you guys think about my picks, and thank you for watching.